The siege of Titan's Edge. The emergency begins. Commander Sarah Chen pressed her face against the reinforced viewing window of Titan's Edge mining facility, watching as the last transport ship disappeared into the darkness of space. The ship carried only 200 people, barely a fraction of the 15,000 souls still trapped on the asteroid station. Her reflection stared back at her from the thick glass, showing worry lines that had not been there a week ago. Behind her, the command center buzzed with frantic activity. Red emergency lights bathed everything in an ominous glow, and the constant hum of overworked air recyclers filled the air. Dr. Marcus Webb hunched over a data terminal, his usually neat gray hair disheveled from running his hands through it, repeatedly. As the station's chief scientist, he had been working around the clock to find solutions to their impossible situation. "Sarah, the power grid is failing faster than we calculated," Marcus said without looking up from his screen. "The mining lasers are drawing too much energy from our defensive systems. If we keep both running, we'll lose everything within 6 hours." Sarah turned away from the window and walked to the central command console. The holographic display showed the asteroid field surrounding their station, with angry red dots marking the positions of enemy ships. 18 Kravok heavy cruisers had appeared 3 days ago, surrounding Titan's Edge like predators circling wounded prey. The Kravok threat engineer, Rosa Delgado, emerged from a maintenance shaft, her dark blue jumpsuit stained with grease, and her tools clanking as she moved. She had been crawling through the station's inner workings for hours, trying to keep critical systems functioning as the alien bombardment slowly tore their home apart. "The hull breaches in Sector 7 are getting worse," Rosa reported, wiping sweat from her forehead. "I've sealed what I can, but we're losing atmosphere faster than the recyclers can replace it. The families in the lower levels are starting to feel the effects." Communications Officer Tim Bradley looked up from his station, his young face pale with exhaustion. For 3 straight days, he had been sending distress signals across every frequency, hoping someone would hear their desperate calls for help. "Still no response from the fleet, Commander. The nearest human ships are at least 3 weeks away, assuming they even received our messages." Sarah felt the weight of command pressing down on her shoulders like a physical burden. 15,000. People looked to her for answers, for hope, for miracles she could not provide. The Kravok Empire had chosen their target carefully. Titan's Edge was isolated, valuable and far from any military protection. Memories of peace. The station had been her home for 7 years, ever since she had accepted the position of facility commander. Back then, Titan's Edge had been a symbol of human achievement, a thriving community built inside a massive asteroid rich with rare minerals. Families had come from across human space to work the mines and build new lives among the stars. She remembered the children playing in the recreational areas, their laughter echoing through corridors that now trembled with each alien weapons strike. She thought about the schools where young minds learned about science and exploration, the gardens where earth plants grew under artificial sunlight, and the observation decks where couples watched the stars together. Dr. Marcus Webb had arrived, 2 years after Sarah, bringing his expertise in mineral extraction and his passion for discovery. He had revolutionized their mining operations, finding ways to extract more resources while causing less damage to the asteroid's structure. His work had made Titan's Edge one of the most profitable facilities in the Outer Rim. The first attack. Rosa Delgado had joined the team 4 years ago, fresh from engineering school and eager to work with the latest mining technology. She had quickly proven herself as someone who could fix anything and solve problems that stumped more experienced engineers. The miners trusted her completely, knowing she would keep their equipment running no matter what challenges arose. Tim Bradley was the newest member of their team, having arrived just 8 months before the attack. The young man had dreams of becoming a deep space explorer, seeing Titan's Edge as a stepping stone to adventures among distant worlds. Now he spent his days sending messages that would probably never be answered. Security Chief David Park had been with the station since its construction began. A former military officer, he had designed their defense systems and trained the security teams. But those defenses had never been intended to hold off a full-scale invasion by one of the galaxy's most aggressive alien empires. The Kravok Empire's ultimatum. The Kravok were known throughout the galaxy for their ruthless expansion and their treatment of conquered peoples. They enslaved entire populations, stripped worlds of resources, and showed no mercy to those who resisted their rule. When their ships had first appeared at the edge of the system, Sarah had hoped they were just passing through. That hope had died quickly when the alien fleet surrounded the station and began jamming all communications. A Kravok commander had then sent a message that chilled Sarah's blood. Humans of the mining facility, you will surrender immediately and submit to Kravok authority. Your people will serve the Empire. Resistance will result in death for all. David Park had been the first to respond, his military training taking over. We don't negotiate with slavers, he had said, his voice steady despite the overwhelming odds they faced. The security chief began organizing the station's defenses, knowing they had little hope but refusing to give up without a fight, preparing for the impossible. The alien ultimatum had given them 24 hours to consider surrender. Sarah had called a meeting of all department heads and section leaders, explaining the situation to everyone who would help coordinate their response. The choice had been unanimous. They would rather die free than live as slaves. Dr. Webb had immediately begun working on ways to use the mining equipment as weapons. The industrial lasers designed to cut through rock could potentially damage alien ships, though they would need major modifications to be effective in combat. Rosa had volunteered to lead the engineering teams making those modifications. Tim Bradley had started broadcasting emergency signals on every frequency, hoping against hope that some human ship might be close enough to help. He sent detailed information about the alien fleet's positions and capabilities, knowing that even if rescue never came, the data might help other humans avoid the same fate. The civilians' courage throughout the station, ordinary people had stepped up to help with the defense preparations. Miners who had never held weapons began training with whatever firearms the security teams could provide. Teachers organized the evacuation of children to the deepest, most protected areas of the station. Medical staff prepared emergency treatment, centers for the wounded they knew would come. Maria Santos, a hydroponics engineer, had converted her plant-growing areas into emergency shelters. She worked alongside Dr. Jennifer Liu, the station's chief medical officer, to ensure the refugees would have clean air and water, even if the main life support systems failed. Chef Antoine Dubois and his kitchen staff had been preparing emergency food supplies, rationing meals to make their stores last as long as possible. They knew that if the siege continued, hunger would become another enemy to fight. The children's questions in the deep shelters, parents struggled to explain the situation to frightened children. 8-year-old Tommy Park, Security Chief David's son, asked his mother why the bad aliens wanted to hurt them. She held him close and told him that sometimes people did terrible things, but that good people always fought to protect each other. Teenage students from the station's school had volunteered to help with communications and logistics. 16-year-old Sarah Kim, named after Commander Chen, had proven particularly skilled at organizing supply distributions. She moved through the shelters with a maturity beyond her years, comforting younger children and helping wherever she was needed. The final 3 hours as the alien deadline approached, Sarah stood once again at the observation window, looking out at the enemy fleet. The Kravok ships hung in space like dark clouds, their weapons pointed at the station like accusatory fingers. She could see smaller craft moving between the larger vessels, probably preparing for boarding operations. Dr. Webb joined her at the window, carrying a data pad with their latest calculations. The modified mining lasers are online, he reported. Rosa and her teams have done incredible work. We might actually be able to damage some of their smaller ships. How long can we hold out? Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer would not be encouraging. Maybe 12 hours if we're lucky, Marcus replied honestly. The power drain from running both defensive shields and weapon systems will overload our reactors eventually. And that's assuming they don't just overwhelm us with sheer numbers. Behind them, Tim Bradley continued his desperate attempts to contact the outside world. His voice had grown hoarse from hours of broadcasting, but he refused to give up hope. "This is Titan's Edge mining facility calling any human vessels. We are under attack by Kravok forces. 15,000 civilians need immediate evacuation. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help." The last stand begins. The Kravok ultimatum expired at exactly 0800 station time. Sarah had gathered her senior staff in the command center, knowing that their next few hours would determine whether Titan's Edge became a symbol of human resistance or another example of alien conquest. "Whatever happens," she told her team, "we make them remember that humans don't surrender. We protect our own, we fight for our freedom, and we never give up hope." David Park checked his weapons one final time and activated the station's defense protocols. Rosa Delgado powered up the modified mining lasers, their energy readings showing dangerous but manageable levels. Dr. Webb began monitoring all systems, ready to reroute power wherever it was needed most. The alien attack began, with a coordinated barrage that shook the entire station. Emergency alarms blared as hull breaches appeared in the outer sections, and the lights flickered as power systems struggled to maintain defensive shields. Sarah gripped the command console and prepared to lead her people in what might be their final battle. In the deep shelters, 15,000 civilians waited and prayed, placing their trust in a handful of defenders who refused to abandon hope even when facing impossible odds. The siege of Titan's Edge had begun, and with it, a test of everything that made humanity worth defending. The ghost ships revenged the Phantom in the Void Captain. Elena Vasquez floated in the zero-gravity command center of the UHS Shadow's Whisper, her dark eyes fixed on the star charts displayed before her. The experimental stealth ship had been drifting in the void between star systems for 6 days, testing its revolutionary cloaking technology far from prying eyes. The mission was supposed to be routine: calibrate the new systems, gather data, and return to base without anyone knowing they had ever been there. The Shadow's Whisper was unlike any vessel in the human fleet. Built in secret shipyards and powered by experimental quantum engines, it could bend light and energy around its hull, making it practically invisible to any known detection method. Only 12 people knew of its existence, and most of them were currently aboard the ship. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Torres monitored the tactical systems from his station, his fingers dancing over holographic controls that would have been impossible to understand just 5 years ago. As the ship's tactical officer, he had spent months learning to operate technology that pushed the boundaries of human engineering. The responsibility was enormous, but so was the potential to change how humanity defended itself among the stars. The desperate signal navigation officer Chen Wei was the first to detect the emergency transmission. The signal was weak and distorted by the vast distances of space, but the words were unmistakably human and undeniably desperate. "This is Titan's Edge mining facility calling any human vessels. We are under attack by Kravok forces. 15,000. Civilians need immediate evacuation." Elena felt her stomach drop as she listened to the transmission. Titan's Edge was a mining station on the very edge of human space, far from any military protection. If the Kravok Empire had attacked it, those people were completely on their own. The nearest human fleet was weeks away, and by then there would be nothing left to save. Chief Engineer Aisha Okafor looked up from her engine monitoring station, her expression grim. "Captain, we're under strict orders to maintain communication. Silence. If we respond to that signal, we'll compromise the entire stealth program." Elena stared at the tactical display, watching the weak signal pulse across the void. Somewhere out there, 15,000 people were fighting for their lives against impossible odds. Children were hiding in shelters while their parents prepared to die. Families were being torn apart by an enemy that showed no mercy to the conquered. "The choice that defines us, Chen. How far to Titan's Edge?" Elena asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her mind. The navigation officer's fingers flew over his controls, calculating distances and hyperspace routes. 16 hours if we push the engines to maximum. But Captain, the stealth drive isn't designed for extended high-speed travel. We could burn out the entire system. Marine Sergeant Jackson Mills stepped forward from his position near the back of the bridge. His combat armor was perfectly maintained, and his weapons were always ready for action. Captain, my squad is ready for immediate deployment. We've been training for exactly this kind of situation. Elena looked around at her crew, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their faces. They had all volunteered for this mission, knowing it might require them to make impossible choices. The Shadow's whisper represented years of research and billions of credits in development. If they lost the ship, humanity would lose a crucial advantage in the ongoing struggle for survival among the stars. But Elena had not joined the military to protect technology. She had joined to protect people. Human people who were fighting and dying while she debated protocols and procedures, breaking the rules. Aisha, prepare the engines for maximum burn, Elena ordered. Chen, plot a course through the nebula drift. It's dangerous, but it might cut our travel time by 3 hours. Her crew immediately began working to carry out her orders, but Elena could see the concern in their eyes. The nebula drift was a region of space where sensor readings became unreliable, and hyperspace navigation was treacherous. Ships had been lost there before, vanishing without a trace into the swirling gases and electromagnetic storms. Captain, Ryan said carefully, this will put us in direct violation of our mission parameters. Command specifically ordered us to avoid any contact with alien forces. Elena stood up from her command chair and walked to the main view screen. Out there in the darkness, ordinary people were making extraordinary sacrifices to protect each other. Miners and engineers and families were standing up to one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy, not because they had any hope of winning, but because they refused to surrender their freedom. Command isn't listening to those people. Die, Elena said firmly. We are. The race against time. The Shadow's whisper jumped into hyperspace with a surge of power that strained every system on the ship. Aisha worked frantically in the engine room, monitoring readings that jumped between normal and catastrophic with each passing minute. The stealth drive was making sounds it had never made before, and several warning lights were flashing red on her control panels. The quantum matrix is destabilizing, Aisha reported over the comm system. I'm doing everything I can to hold it together, but we're pushing way beyond design specifications. Elena gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered through the hyperspace tunnel. They were traveling faster than any stealth ship had ever gone, racing through dimensions that human science barely understood. One mistake, one system failure, and they would be lost forever in the void between realities. Chen Wei guided them through the nebula drift with skill that bordered on artistry. The region was filled with gravimetric anomalies and sensor ghosts that could lead navigators astray, but he had studied these star charts for years. He knew every current and every hazard in this dangerous corner of space. Intelligence gathering. During the long journey, Ryan worked with the ship's artificial intelligence to analyze everything they knew about Kravok tactics and technology. The aliens were ruthless but predictable, following rigid military doctrines that had served them well in previous conquests. They relied on overwhelming force and intimidation, expecting their enemies to surrender rather than face certain death. 18 heavy cruisers, Ryan reported as they reviewed the intelligence data, plus support vessels and boarding craft. They've got the station completely surrounded, but they're using a standard siege formation. It's efficient, but not particularly creative. Elena studied the tactical projections, looking for weaknesses in the alien deployment. The Kravok had arranged their ships in a perfect sphere around Titan's edge, but perfect formations often had perfect vulnerabilities. What about their sensor coverage? They're focused on the station, Ryan replied. Their long-range sensors are probably active, but they won't be expecting a stealth ship, especially not one coming from the direction of the nebula drift. The impossible plan. Jackson Mills joined the planning session, bringing his expertise in ground combat and boarding operations. Captain, if we can get close enough, my Marines can take out their command ship, cut off the head, and the rest of the fleet might retreat. Elena shook her head. We can't risk a boarding operation with only 8 Marines against hundreds of Kravok soldiers. We need to be smarter than that. What if we don't need to board them? Chen Wei suggested. The stealth system makes us invisible, but it doesn't make us intangible. We could use the ship itself as a weapon. The idea was dangerous and unprecedented, but it might be their only chance to save the people of Titan's Edge. Elena looked at her crew, seeing determination in their faces despite the fear they all felt. They were about to attempt something that had never been tried before, using experimental technology in ways its designers had never imagined. Arrival at Titan's Edge. The Shadow's Whisper dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Titan's Edge system, its engines smoking and several systems offline. Aisha had worked miracles to keep them running, but the stealth drive was operating on backup power and held together by prayer and determination. There, Ryan said, pointing to the tactical display. 18 Kravok heavy cruisers, just like the intelligence report said. They're bombarding the station, but it looks like the defenders are still fighting. Elena could see the flashes of weapons fire between the alien ships and the mining station. The battle had been going on for hours, and the defenders were clearly outmatched. Several sections of the station showed signs of heavy damage, and debris floated in the space around the asteroid. Status of the stealth systems? Elena asked. Barely functional, Aisha replied. But we should be invisible to their sensors for at least another hour. After that, I can't guarantee anything. The ghost ship strikes. Elena activated the ship's communication system and sent a tight beam message directly to Titan's Edge. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the UHS Shadow's Whisper. We are in position and ready to assist. Prepare your people for immediate evacuation after we engage the enemy. The response came immediately, filled with disbelief and desperate hope. Shadow's Whisper, this is Commander Sarah Chen. Are you really here? We can't see you on our sensors. That's the idea, Elena replied. When we attack, get your people to the evacuation points. We'll try to create an opening for you. Elena looked at her crew one final time, seeing courage and determination in their faces. They were about to attempt the impossible, using an experimental ship and untested tactics against overwhelming odds. They might not survive the next hour, but they would not abandon their fellow humans to slavery and death. The Phantom's assault. The Shadow's Whisper moved through the alien fleet like a ghost, invisible and silent. Elena positioned the ship directly behind the Kravok command vessel, a massive dreadnought that coordinated the entire attack. The aliens had no idea that death was approaching from the darkness. All weapons charged and ready, Ryan reported, targeting the command ship's engine. Section. Fire, Elena ordered. The stealth ship's experimental weapons struck the Kravok dreadnought with devastating effect. The alien vessel's shields flared and collapsed as energy weapons and kinetic projectiles tore through its hull. Secondary explosions rippled along its length as critical systems failed. The Kravok fleet erupted in confusion as their command ship listed helplessly, its engines dead, and its communications array destroyed. The remaining vessels began searching frantically for their attacker, but the Shadow's Whisper had already moved to its next target. The Tide Turns Elena guided her ship through the enemy formation, striking at weak points in critical systems. The aliens could not fight what they could not see, and their rigid formations became death traps as the Phantom ship attacked from impossible angles. Jackson Mills and his Marines prepared for emergency boarding operations, ready to evacuate civilians from the station as soon as an opening appeared. Chen Wei plotted escape routes through the asteroid field, looking for paths that would allow transport ships to reach safety. On Titan's Edge, Commander Sarah Chen watched in amazement as the alien fleet began to fall apart. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before were now burning wrecks, their crews struggling to understand what was happening to them. All evacuation ships launch immediately, Sarah ordered. This is our chance. The Shadow's Whisper had given them hope when all seemed lost, proving that humanity would never abandon its own. As the Phantom ship continued its devastating assault, 15,000 people began their journey to safety, saved by the courage of 12 humans who refused to let evil triumph in the darkness of space. The ghost ship had arrived like an angel, a vengeance, and the galaxy would remember that humanity never surrendered its own.